Listen to the Vibes.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Listen to the Vibes. I have here Mr. Greg Schwem, who is a corporate comedian. And I want you to tell me, what is a corporate comedian?
That is true. You know, it's funny because if I just told you I was a stand-up comedian, we could move on because everybody knows what that is. I had to take it one step further, Kyle. So corporate is, I specialize in shows for business organizations, big companies, business associations. And that's something that I didn't start out doing. I started out as a regular stand-up comedian, but I had the kind of act and I was doing the kind of material very early on, talking a lot about computers and, you know, trying to figure out how to work one and all of that, was sort of garnering attention from corporations, even people like that work for big companies that were in the crowd at clubs would come up to me afterwards and they would say, you know, that bit you did about being on hold with tech support for 2.5 hours would really resonate at our offsite meeting that we're doing. And would you like to perform? And I mean, I didn't even know that this kind of stuff existed. I didn't know they had these kind of events because I never worked in the corporate sector. My background was in journalism before I got into comedy, before I left journalism for comedy. So I was like, really? You guys just go away for a couple of days and stay at this really nice hotel and talk about business? Yeah, sign me up for that. I'd be more than happy to come and make fun of you in a nice way, in a positive way. So little by little, I started getting hired and the companies that I got hired for kept getting bigger and bigger, and the events kept getting bigger and bigger. And I finally just decided this is something I'm good at, and it was a great way to kind of separate myself from the pack. Because I think everybody in any kind of show business, you have to eventually find a niche, whether it's the way you speak or the audience that you cater to. You have to have something that you're known for. And that's what I became known for. So that's what I've been doing for about the last 25 years or so.
And you said you were a journalist.
Yes. Yeah, that was it. That was my background. I majored in journalism in college. And I always thought that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a TV news reporter, or I wanted to be on TV. And I started out in newspaper down in West Palm Beach, Florida. I started out as a newspaper reporter. And then I jumped to the local TV station. And that was great. I mean, I was 22, 23 and reporting on things. I mean, South Florida's a messed up. It is a messed up environment. Still, it was then, is now, probably will always be. And that's good and bad, but you get a little bit of everything in South Florida. And I was able to report on some pretty amazing things. But I also, at the same time that I was doing that, I'd always been a fan of stand-up, and I'd been doing stand-up comedy really since I was 16. That's when I first tried it. It was in high school. Yeah. And it was just a hobby. It was a way to meet people because I didn't know anybody when I moved down to West Palm. I didn't know anybody. I took the job over the phone and just was like, okay, this seems fun. So I started hanging out at comedy clubs, and the other comedians became my friends, and that was my social life. And the fact that I did it as a hobby, I was able to get stage time, and they opened up a really, really good club. A guy that had really deep pockets. He was a concert promoter, and he was also a big comedy fan. But because he had a lot of money, he was able to get some really good comics that even back then were starting to, you know, work theaters and get TV deals and sitcom deals and things like that. And he was able to get them at his club. So I got to see the best every weekend, and sometimes work with the best. So, and little by little, I just, the more I did it, I just thought, I like doing this more. I like making people laugh more than depressing people, which is kind of what I was doing every night on the news. And whether I wanted to or not, that's just what they sent me out to do. And I didn't have a say in really the kinds of stories that I covered. So I just decided I was going to quit my job and try to make it as a comedian. And that was in 1989. It's so weird because a lot of the bands that you and I grew up with, and you know, those kind of 80s bands and so forth, those guys, some of those bands are now doing corporate dates. You know, they're all in their 60s and so forth, and they get paid very well to come out and do an hour and 15 minutes. That's the standard corporate set, is 75 minutes. And I love watching them because they still look like one of my favorite bands in high school was Styx. All right.
I love Styx.
Yes. Okay. I got to work with Styx a couple of years ago.
No way.
Private event. A big insurance company hired them. There's only 2 guys from pretty much the original lineup that are left, but the coolest guys. And the big rock star thing was gone at this point. I think they're just happy to be out there still working. And once these guys got on stage, I was looking at them like, how many times have they played Blue Collar Man and so forth? I mean, thousands, and yet they still look like they're having fun. And if they weren't, they hit it very well. And I thought, how cool for them. How cool to still be doing what you love when you're in your mid 60s or so forth. And you still, as long as you still sound good, why not?
Tell me about some of the comedians that you've worked with or that you've got to see.
Yeah, let's see, who have I starting with way back in that club in West Palm that I mean, Jerry Seinfeld worked there. A lot of these guys that were really big, they would come down there for a reason. Like Jerry Seinfeld's mom lived about 20 minutes away, so he would come to work the club so he could visit his mom. I mean, that was one of the reasons. Spring Train, a lot of them were big baseball fans. So like Jeff Foxworthy, was a big Atlanta Braves fan, and the Atlanta Braves used to spring train in West Palm Beach, so he'd come down. I worked with him. I played golf with him one day. I actually started out with Larry the Cable Guy. I can't call him Larry the Cable Guy. I got to call him Dan Whitney because he was Dan Whitney at the time. So he's still Dan to me. But he and I were part of this little contingent of guys that started out in West Palm. And believe it or not, there was like 5 of us, and we've all gone on to do stuff. I mean, in different ways. Dan's the most successful. Carrot Top was another one that was in that group. And, he's big in Vegas now. There's
steroids.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, that's just weird to look at. Yeah,
big in Vegas.
A guy named Todd Barry, who's done very well, moved to New York and has done very well. Used to open for Louis C.K. a lot when Louis C.K. was a thing. So anyway, so I worked with him. I worked with. I got to open some shows for Dennis Miller back when Dennis was in his prime, like when he was Monday Night Football color guy. What a train wreck that was, huh?
Oh my God!
What were they thinking?
You had to have a PhD to keep
exactly
up what he was saying.
Wouldn't you have loved to have been a fly on the wall? And they said, "Hey, Dennis Miller might make a good third guy in the booth for Monday Night Football." And it only lasted 1 year, but the year that I opened for him, it was that year. So he was playing. This was like a 4,000 seat. We did at the Airy Crown Theater, in the club days coming up, a lot of guys. Steve Harvey, I worked with him in a club in Kansas City before he was anybody. And I could go on and on. I mean, I'm trying to remember all the different guys I worked with and girls too, who've just really gone on to do some big things. But and that's the great thing about comedy. There's a great Showtime documentary on right now about the history of the Comedy Store in LA, which I've never worked. I've only been to LA a couple of times. It was just not. I was never one of those comics. It's like I got to go out to LA and try and make it out there.
Right. But
it's if you're into comedy, if your listeners are into comedy and they get Showtime, it's really interesting because the Comedy Store's been around since like 1973. And, they go, I mean, it's where Letterman started. It's where Leno started. They interview both of them and just talk about the history of it and how careers were made and how careers died there and kind of how the Comedy Store went from being the place to the place you didn't want to be seen to the place that almost closed to the place that is now on the way back. It's interesting to hear some of the comedians and comedians just talk about it and what it meant to them. I also have a TV series that I'm excited about that I call The Comedian Crashes Your Pad. And the way that was formed was I started to become kind of intrigued with the home sharing market about 4 or 5 years ago. The Airbnbs. Have you ever done home sharing?
No,
never have. Any interest?
When I'm trying to get rid of kids, so no, I have no interest.
I certainly would never. Yeah, I certainly would not want somebody living in my house. I mean, I couldn't be the person hosting, but I love the idea of just. The way the series came about was I thought anybody who would invite strangers into their house or wherever it was they lived, without really even vetting them, without really asking any questions, just saying,
Right.
come on in. I thought that had to be a very interesting person. And especially in this age of when we're all, on our guard all the time, and we all,
Oh, yeah.
live behind walls and have guns, in our nightstands and so forth, and security systems, and we don't trust anybody. And yet there's still this group of people who's like, yeah, come on in, I'll give you the code. So, and just leave the key in the dish when you're done. And I thought that's pretty cool. And so I thought, as long as, and my kids had gotten a little older, and it wasn't as big of a deal now to have to run home immediately after shows because there was Little League or something like that. So I thought, well, why don't I just maybe see if I can find somebody interesting to stay with while I was in town performing. Mm-hmm. So I'd stay at the hotel where the gig was one night, and then I'd go and I'd find a home share either the previous night or the night after. And I started doing this, and I thought there's something here. These people are really interesting. So I started bringing a camera and just recording the interactions. And I told all my hosts, I said, if you agree to this, I said, here's the only thing that's a given. I said, you have to consent to a sit down interview with me where you talk about home sharing. So that's like my version of a podcast. And you have to consent to a tour of your property, an on-camera tour of your property. And I go, that's the minimum. Anything else you want to do, let's do it. I go, if you have a favorite bar you like, if you do something, if there's some place to see that you just hang out at or something, let's go. And I have met so many really cool people and really gotten inside their lives, which is what I enjoy doing. I just enjoy it. People intrigue me. So, I just was doing them all, editing them on my iPhone and putting them up on YouTube and seeing if anybody was interested. And, I got a little traction, nothing great, but just last month I got a distribution company out in LA that signed on as the distributor. So now they're going to hopefully take it to the next level. So you can find the episodes on, if you download an app in the Apple Store and Google Play called Fantastic Entertainment.
Okay.
You can watch episodes now. We've taken them off YouTube and so forth. There's a couple. If you go to a comediancrashesyourpad.com, there's a couple of little ones you can see. But for the most part, yeah, that's Fantastic Entertainment has taken it over, and I'm excited about 2021. And the great thing is in home sharing, we're still able to do this during the pandemic. Because you kind of set your own. You decide where you want to go. You're not at the mercy of, say, a hotel.
You get invited to a friend's party, not a corporate party, but a friend's party, and people find out that you do comedy. This is the first thing out of their mouth. Tell me something funny or tell me a joke.
Yep. A lot of people, not my close friends, they've kind of learned, but yes, I do get a lot of say something funny. And I think it's kind of a knee-jerk reaction. And I have the standard responses, which hopefully don't make me sound like a jerk. I'll say something like, "Oh man, I'm not funny on Thursdays." If you'd ask that question Tuesday, I would be riffing, but Thursday's my day off. Or sometimes I'll say, what do you do? I'll find out what they do. It's like, oh, you're a dentist? Come on. Well, does anybody ever say drill my tooth right now? How come it's just me? How come it's just this profession where I have to perform all the time? So, and I think people they mean well. It's just something that comes with the territory. I don't think anybody is, trying to test me or quiz me or something. I get more uncomfortable, I think, and I think any comedian will tell you when people find out you're a comedian and then they think that everything you say is funny. Like you'll just be saying something and they'll start laughing or it's like, no, I just said are there any, where all I said was, do you have club soda to go with this? It wasn't a joke. I just want to know, where the hell's a club soda? We're at a party. Or people who feel like it's a contest. Like, he's funny, so I need to try and be funnier. I don't get that. I mean, it's not a contest, and I don't go to parties with the intention of being funny and entertaining people. I've actually turned down shows because you mentioned your reunion. You mentioned that's why you got on social media. Well, I've had offers to do, high school reunions, my own, and schools I had never heard of, wedding rehearsal dinners. And I've turned them all down, and I turn them down because I go, well, don't you want to visit? Why do you want me there? Why do you want to all shut up and have to listen to me? I mean, if I go to my reunion, that's the last thing I want to. I want to walk around and talk to people I haven't seen in 20, 30 years or whatever. Yeah. I don't want to be told, okay, now we all have to sit at a table to listen to this guy that nobody knows. I don't get it. I don't understand why people want comedians, and certain comedians are not right for every situation.
I want to thank everybody that joins in and listens and watches us on YouTube. Without your support, we wouldn't be here.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Listen to the Vibes. You can catch us on Buzzsprout or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts, and on YouTube. Follow us on Facebook at The Vibes Broadcast Network,